Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit more on fireside chats. More specifically, it's FDR's radio program to the American people. All right, so to start off, the Great Depression was something that left the American people helpless and in great need. President Hoover at the time was not able to aid the American people, and President FDR was left as he came into his presidency with many economic and social problems. Okay. As you can see in these two pictures, it shows of Americans who are unemployed on the right, and on the left you see outside of a bank, American Union Bank to be exact. And it kind of just shows the mistrust that the American people had towards the banks as they wanted to withdraw their money from these banks. And again, the unemployment line, it's just a show that it was not just a couple of people. A lot of people around there were looking for jobs because they were left with nothing after the stock market crashed. So in 1932, you see the election of FDR as he ran against President Hoover. FDR ran his campaign on the promise of a New Deal, so new social reforms and new economic reforms that he wanted to bring. And then on one of the bullet points I put, President Hoover did not help the people, but helped businesses. And Americans wanted a change of leadership that would help them. FDR brought charisma and optimism to the people as they were desperate for help. Again, during the Great Depression, there were many of the American people suffered, and they were left with not a lot of resources for themselves, and just a mistrust in the government as a whole. A little bit more on that. Like I said, President Hoover focused, although President FDR had similar morals or beliefs like Hoover did, as you know, you shouldn't have spending on things that weren't deficit spending, that weren't important, like social reforms. But at this time, FDR knew that that was something that the people of America desperately needed. So that's what he wanted to promise the people. So during the 1930s is when a lot of the radio and mass communications like that began to grow, and FDR was able to use this to his advantage. So through the radios and his fireside chat, that's what the program was called, he was able to connect to the American people and talk to them directly. As FDR wanted support for his New Deal policies, and as when he started his presidency. And it was also a way to build a relationship with the American people and gain their trust. Hoover focused on reforming banks. FDR wanted to had, like I said, similar ideologies, and knew that the social reforms and economic reforms were necessary to get out of depression. So he wanted to bring these type of conversations with the people of America so that they can explain how he can explain it to them in a way that they could understand what he wanted to do to these new policies with new policies. Sorry. A little bit more on the fireside chats. The people, as you can see here, are gathered around the radio trying to listen to these speeches that FDR was giving. And while he wrote his speeches, they would say that FDR would visualize the American people and thought of them in a family setting, like eating dinner together or sitting outside or something like what they're doing here in the picture, just sitting around the radio just as a family. And he was able to use this way of thinking while he wrote as a way to appeal to them. And even by using personal pronouns like you and me, he was able to kind of make them feel like he was one of them and they weren't alone. And one of the quotes that I found They described his way of saying his speeches by saying that he used stories and anecdotes to make the New Deal seem familiar and unthreatening. Because during this time, they didn't know how it would be once the government got involved in many of these social and economic reforms. Because previously, the government wasn't very involved in the actual this side of it was more state ran, now federal ran. So they weren't sure how it was going to be and if they were going to have how it ran, basically. Um, yes, let's see. Before I get into the video, I do want to add that a lot of the things that the way he was talking was, people describe him as a fellow who did not talk down on the public. So as they had, like I said previously, they had a lot of people who were not involved in the actual people, but just corporations and banking and stuff like that. But for the first time, they had somebody who was talking to them directly. So let's play the video. Pause it here.
1933.
You people must have faith. You must not be stampeded by rumors or guesses. Let us unite in banishing fear. We have provided the machinery to restore our financial system, and it is up to you to support and make it work. It is your problem, my friends, your problem no less than it is mine. Together, we cannot fail.
Technology.
Yeah, so like he said, he really said that it was a problem between him as well and the people, not just by the people themselves. And a little bit, if you can see here on some of his opening statements, it's kind of like he begins them by through conversation. So it's like if he was to be meeting a friend or anything like that, it's just a way of conversing with them so that they can kind of feel like he was right there in their living room as they were listening to this. So again, it was a way for him to connect with them in a different level than any of the previous government leader like this had done. Yeah. To start a little bit more on the next topic, the fireside chats and the World War II. So President FDR not only used it to bring a little bit more awareness to his New Deal policies, but he also used it to give the people of the United States more information on foreign affairs and educate them on the foreign affairs and just kind of detail what was going on abroad during the time of war. As he did start his fireside chats on more domestic problems, he did progress into a more of a national problem that was happening around the nation. In one of his first chats that he did, where he began to talk about foreign affairs, was the fireside chat on September 3rd, 1939, where he says a little bit more on the Great War that was going on at the time and how the people are in the United States were receiving detailed news and just information about what was happening and that they should just remain calm. Again, just kind of a comforting side of him for the American people to be calm. Later on, he does progress into and knowing that there is a little bit of panic on what's happening and that the people of America were kind of scared of what was going to happen because they were unsure of it. And so he was just using his speeches to give them a calm way of thinking and not stressing about what was happening, because at this time they still remained neutrality and they weren't involved yet. But as we can see in the next slide, um, as he continued to talk about the war in his following fireside chats, for example, September 11th, that's when he began to show that the United States was being a ship was attacked by a German submarine. And then next on December 9th, 1941, a couple of months after, he talked about the attack on Pearl Harbor. And then so the rest also speak of the war and give the American people updates of what was happening as they became involved in the actual war. Last, I saw a connection of these fireside chats to what we have now. For example, the State of the Union address. These fireside chats became an example for future presidents to follow, so that they can address the American people as a whole on important issues. And also, one of these sources that I found was a quote that I saw was every United States president since Roosevelt's time has utilized modern technology to communicate directly with the nation about pressing legislative policies and international challenges, and they all owe something to Roosevelt's example. Um, for example, Barack Obama's State of the Union address or Joe Biden's State of the Union address, it was just a way for FDR to blaze the trail to allow a connection between the American people and their leader that they had elected, through these use of mass communications that were now available to them. And